Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SAP CPI Integration Suite DevOps Workshop and Certification by ReleaseOwl. I'm Tanya from ReleaseOwl, and I'll be introducing you today to the workshop and what we have in store. So over the next 90 minutes, here's what you can expect. An overview of ReleaseOwl and ReleaseOwl Success Community, an overview of the Cloud DevOps Professional SAP CPI certification, SAP CPI overview, SAP CPI challenges without DevOps, ReleaseOwl DevOps for SAP CPI. Then we'll move into the hands-on workshop, and we'll guide you how to take the certification and how to access the ReleaseOwl platform. So here are our speakers for the day. First, we have Navneet Rokala. He's the VP of Growth at ReleaseOwl with a decade's experience in DevOps and SAP. As a firm believer in the power of DevOps, he strives to further the DevOps movement into the SAP space using ReleaseOwl, a native DevOps suite designed specifically for the SAP platform. Then we'll have Rahul Pipala, who is a member of the product management team with a flair for pre-sales. In addition to having a rich understanding of SAP, he's also skilled at developing solutions as well as organizing, planning, creating, and delivering compelling proof of concept demonstrations. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Navneet.
Sure. Thank you, Tanya. A very warm welcome to everyone across the world. So today, the certification and the workshop around CPI will majorly focus on three aspects. The first aspect is how do we adopt and how can we apply the DevOps principles for CPI? This will be our major coverage for today's workshop. Along with that, we will also talk about where and how to learn, collaborate, and work together to the fastest growing SAP community that is designed by ReleaseOwl. And thirdly, by learning the principles and also trying to understand where to learn, we will also demonstrate a hands-on workshop and how could you automate and implement and bring in SAP CPI automation into the DevOps workflow. So to begin with, let me give you a detailed insights about ReleaseOwl. So ReleaseOwl today is the leading native SAP DevOps platform for all the SAP applications, including ECC, S4, BTP, and CPI. So today, ReleaseOwl in the market serves as the unified and single platform for automation of packaging, deployment, testing, and compliance for entire SAP applications. So today with ReleaseOwl's application, a lot of SAP customers bring in a lot of confidence and seamlessly accelerate their application development on SAP BTP. So there are some of the integrations that we on the fly integrate with out of the box with Jira, ServiceNow, Azure DevOps from a change and an application management perspective. From a testing perspective, we integrate with HCL OneTest and Tricentis Tosca, and there are other enterprise-grade test automation tools that are in the pipeline. And from a versioning perspective, we integrate with Git. And from a compliance perspective, there is an integration with SonarQube. So this suite of entire services bring in a lot of automation, a lot of DevOps principles, and helps you move fastest to the market, wherein you can do more frequent releases, improve your productivity by 3x, a reduced downtime that can gradually decrease. And this absolutely comes at zero setup and maintenance cost because ReleaseOwl is a SaaS application. ReleaseOwl is also certified and is also available on SAP Store. And from a compliance and an InfoSec perspective, we are also ISO 27001 certified. Let's move on. So the second thing that I talked about is the first ever community. For us, for as a company, as SAP professionals, as DevOps enthusiasts, it is very important to understand, learn, collaborate, and grow together. So we have seen a lot of enterprise-grade platforms have moved from platform to also enabling self-learn academies, because it is also important to create an environment for you to learn, discuss with peers, understand the challenges, come out with best practices, and implement them in your day-to-day life cycle. So in such keeping that in mind, so we have introduced a success community, which is pretty fast growing in the SAP community, where you will have a self-learn academy. So you've got courses around multiple SAP technologies, either it could be ECC, S4, BTP, and CPI, but today we'll focus more on CPI. And you will have various certifications at various levels, basic, intermediate, advanced. And if you're stuck and if you need assistance, there's a 24/7 help desk where our customer support can guide you in terms of learning or collaboration. And there is a wide range of discussion forum across geographies on a unified platform where you can discuss your challenges or exchange ideas or input product innovations and things like that. So we look into this two aspects as we move along into the workshop. So the next thing, so what can you expect in the certification? So obviously this certification will introduce you to our aspect of DevOps principles for CPI and how can you improve your change and release management for your integration suite. The highlights of certification will be three things. You'll be dealing with artifact management. So where Rahul will be demonstrating on how to synchronize multiple artifacts. How do you configure? How do we manage configurations? How do we version the artifacts of CPI? And how do we introduce iFlow unit testing? And also creating a seamless release pipeline where the artifacts can be packaged, deployed, and tested simultaneously. And we'll also talk about a change management module. So where we'll talk about how can you integrate with your change management systems like Azure DevOps or Jira, and how can you link and interlink the artifacts with multiple user stories, and how can you plan your backlog. So the entire certification will be covered on these three aspects, and we'll look at them during the hands-on workshop. So I'm sure everyone knows about the CPI technology capabilities, but just to give you a very high level, so we'll talk about cloud integration, API management, open connectors, integration advisor, and event mesh. So what are the challenges with CPI? So let me spend a little more time on here. So we've been working with some of the Fortune 2000 companies and Global 2000 companies. Very frequently, we hear about these 6 things, and which are also important and critical to apply in the CPI DevOps arena, the principles around DevOps. So there are a lot of manual tasks that the CPI developers deal with. Either it could be with deployment, or it could be with testing, or the monitoring aspect is pretty much time consuming. And there's lack of automation at different aspects in the release cycle. So since the teams deal with multiple artifacts, so there is an iFlow management with multiple teams working on CPI applications. Keeping a track of versions is difficult. Managing configurations is difficult. And iFlows and changes made could be a challenge that requires more efficient management. And across all these, maintaining these things, there's a heavy failure rate because there is a lot of manual intervention that cannot be avoided. So we look at bringing in more automation into CPI artifacts. And how do we orchestrate the validation? And how do we introduce the workflows of packaging, deployment, and testing, which can further reduce the failure rate and bring in more efficiencies into the CPI DevOps. Rollback is another critical scenario where if you would want to undo a production rollback or if you would want to undo a deployment, it becomes very Herculean task for CPI developers or the CPI team to come back to the previous state. So there's a limited rollback capability existing as of today. So we'll talk about how can we overcome such instances with ReleaseOwl and other platforms. And because of all these manual tasks, managing configurations with higher failure rates, limited load-back capabilities, it all impacts on the development lifecycle. And since there is no efficient DevOps management around CPI, it further reduces the speed of application development in CPI. And there hasn't been, unit testing is one of the predominant players in the entire DevOps ecosystem, where it helps you test the applications as soon as you develop without any dependency on third-party tool. So we look at how the unit testing can be automated in the CPI DevOps workflow. And how does ReleaseOwl solve it? So we have multiple aspects to it. We'll move to the next slide where we'll talk about how ReleaseOwl is enabling enterprises from a CPI DevOps perspective. So there are multiple pieces that we have got together to bring in automation, to bring in efficiencies, to drive faster time to market, to bring in more increase in the release velocity for SAP customers. So firstly, to start with, we have integrated with a lot of change management tools. Some of them are represented here. So where the development can start from the user story level. So you can do a user story driven releases, user story driven development. And to help you achieve that, we have built integrations with Jira, Azure DevOps, and ServiceNow. And we've also built a single screen system where you can manage your entire configurations. You can synchronize your CPI artifacts from ReleaseOwl directly without being dependent on the SAP systems. And we've also introduced versioning, which will allow you to track changes more seamlessly. You'll be able to understand what configurations have changed, what artifacts have changed in a more efficient manner. Along with that, comparison across your multiple environments, which makes it more easier for you to synchronize two SAP systems, for you to understand what is available in dev versus what is available in QA with an easy representation. And we've also brought in a CPI unit test generator where you can input the values and the test scripts can be automatically generated. We'll talk about that. We'll discuss that in detail during the workshop. And the important thing that we were talking about is rollback. We'll also talk about how can you undo your deployed changes and remain with the previous state in a scenario where you would want to go back to the previous state. And for the business teams, more of governance in terms of to understand the kind of reports, the kind of change failures, full yards of DORA metrics. And finally, an integration with Git and some other version control systems that will fulfill your entire DevOps journey with ReleaseOwl. Moving on. This will be the workflow that you could experience in the next few minutes from Rahul. So as you see, there's a change management system on the top. You can call it as an application lifecycle management system on the top, where the user stories are fetched from Jira. And there are three aspects to this entire lifecycle. One is a change management aspect where all your user stories, prints are maintained in your application management system. And the entire system is available within ReleaseOwl. And we are able to fetch the user story from your change management system. And we are enabling devs to attach the CPI artifacts to that user story, which becomes and which becomes a user story with completed information. Whenever you're trying to track a user story, you will have much needed information about artifacts, what went through multiple environments at a single place. And we are also defining an automated release pipeline, which will help you package, deploy, and test your artifacts. So in the automated release pipeline, we've introduced peer review, and we all agree that the peer review is the first validation criteria in any of the application development lifecycle. Then we have impact analysis, which will give you a heads up on what could happen if this artifact moves to the next environment. The unit test generator, where the teams can immediately test their applications, test their artifacts, test their user stories once they are moving to the next environment. Then we'll set up an approval process for QA before it moves to QA, where the leaders or the analysts or the release managers or the QA heads can move this artifact, a bundled artifact, in an automated manner through a very simple approval modes. And once the approval is complete, then the phase moves to testing, where you can integrate with tools like HCL1 test or Tosca. And then there is a change mode approval using ServiceNow that you could establish. And then we'll deploy into production through an approval workflow, and it completes the deployment. And once the deployment is completed, as you see, the status of it is written back to the application management systems or the change management systems, so that the whole 9 yards of the application development, right from user story to updating back to the user story, is complete. And this entire module can happen within ReleaseOwl, as you see on the screen. So moving on. So how can you achieve? There could be a lot of questions in the attendees on what to do to adopt these changes or to apply these changes into a CPI DevOps. There are 3 ways that you could do it. One is custom Jenkins setup. So there's a link to this blog here. So you can configure your Jenkins pipeline and integrate with different tools for CPI validations and deployment, the traditional way of running any DevOps cycle. And then there is SAP CI/CD using CTMS. You can set up your CPI pipelines. You can set up you can configure and run your predefined pipelines for your CI and CD purposes. And there is a link to this blog here as well. So it will also guide you on how you could set up. And the third aspect is ReleaseOwl. So as you see, a lot of enterprises are moving to solutions that are specifically driven for those technologies rather than using open source or generic technologies, because these specific solutions that are native, that are built on the technology, will understand and will behave like the technology that it is built on, like ReleaseOwl. So as you see, you can define your own pipelines and approvals for your CI and CD for CPI and enable DevOps for CPI in ReleaseOwl itself. And how to set up? As I said, so it's a SaaS application. It requires 0 setup and 0 maintenance. Moving on. And this will be our CPI workshop flow. So this is what Rahul will be guiding us through. So we'll make changes to an iFlow. We will register a CPI environment. This will be our preparatory phase for this entire workshop. And then we'll talk about the features on how do we enable automation around CPI, how do we sync artifacts, how do we version control, how do we compare versions, and how do we manage configuration. And then we'll talk about unit test generation. We'll talk about how do we set up release pipelines? How do we validate them? How do we run unit tests? How do we imbibe the security rules, approval processes, deployments, backup, and rollback? So at this moment, I will hand over this conversation to Rahul. So he will work us through the workshop. And I will again come back to you guys with more information on certifications, on how to access ReleaseOwl platform, and other questions that you might have. Rahul, can you take it over from here?
Yeah. Thank you, Nami. That was a great introduction that you were given. Just let me share my screen just before I start. Just give us some. Okay. So everyone's able to hear, I guess, loud and clear. And as said, the demo preparation for us will begin with the workshop workflow that we have just shown. Okay, so as for the workflow, what we'll do is we'll try to make change to our artifact, and then we will see how we can register the environment in ReleaseOwl. Once we register the environments, then we'll start working on how we can sync the artifacts, then use the release pipeline to move our artifacts from one environment to another environment, and so on. So let's not make much delay, and we'll just make few quick changes to the artifacts or the iFlow that we are working on. So let's quickly make a change. Not a big change. That's let's say workshop hands-on. And then once a developer makes his changes, then he can save his change as the latest version, which is 1.0.32. Once a developer has worked on his changes, then he can quickly go to ReleaseOwl and see how we can integrate these CPI trends into ReleaseOwl, and how we can sync these artifacts into the ReleaseOwl, and how we can move this. So here we have a ReleaseOwl platform. In the administration section, you can see there is a environment section, and where we can register the CPI environments. So here there is an example. I have already registered few of the environments or tenants over here in the ReleaseOwl. It's a pretty quick kind of setup that you can do it out right away. Just provide the name, authentication type, how you want to authenticate by basic authorization or with the OAuth, and by depending on the configuration that you have given over here, you can just select the credentials or OAuth credentials that you maintain in the credential manager, which is nothing but a vault where you will maintain your credentials. And once you maintain that credential, those credentials, you can pick the credentials from here right away. Then just provide the tenant URL to which you want to register or you want to sync up with, and that's it. So this will allow us the ReleaseOwl to communicate with the tenant that you're working on. So you can also use your custom IDPs if you have in place that, and if you have enabled the Git, then what we have the feature that you can sync the entire artifacts that you have developed to your Git repository. So you can push your changes to the Git repositories to ReleaseOwl right away. So here also you can just provide the Git credentials and the repository name and the branch, and we'll do the rest by syncing your artifacts from the SAP platform to your Git. So let's avoid that. And once you're okay, you can test it out if the connection is established or not. And then once you're okay, then we can save this. So as we have saved, let's save this environment. The next part of our development, we will make the changes to our artifacts as we already did, and what we will do is we will sync the latest artifacts into our platform. So each and every project that you're working on, so there might be different teams working on different artifacts. You can create different projects and assign those projects with the environment that you're working on, and from there on you can sync the artifacts into the platform. So in the build, we have different sections. In the left side, as you can see, we have the dashboards where you can see the overall project related KPIs that you can see. Then we have the integration with, as we have the change management section where you can integrate different ALM tools as said by Navneet, like Jira, ServiceNow, and Azure DevOps. So at the moment, I have synced with the Jira. So here you can see all the user stories that are available in Jira are available into the report where you can start working on. Then we have the build section where you can sync your artifacts, as said, all the artifacts that are available in the registered environment. So here the development environment whichever you are working on can be synced to the ReleaseOwl platform, and from here onwards you can move your changes to the higher environment. So as we have already made changes to our artifact, which is discount cal artifact, which is iFlow, what I will do is I will quickly go ahead and sync this artifact into the ReleaseOwl. So I can sync this artifact so that it will communicate with the registered environment and sync it to the platform. So as you can see, it was earlier 1.0.3231. Now it has updated to 1.0.32. Not only that, you can also see the configurational changes across the environment that you have registered and compare those values over here. So here you can see there's a dev environment that you're working on, the configuration changes that you have maintained, the production environment, and the QA environment. So not only by you can compare it, but you can also edit these values. So there might be few configuration changes that needs to be updated once the configuration as required for the environment. You can update those values right away. And what we will do is we will take care of your changes and we will deploy these changes, whatever you have maintained over here, to the environment. So let's move ahead. Here, as we have synced as well, so we can also see the versions that are available. So far, we have seen, we can compare these versions as well. So you can select two versions that you want to compare and say compare. What it will do is it will pick the versions that you have worked on and it will give the delta changes that you have made so far. So these are the changes that we just made. And if you want to see the full version also, it's available. So you can compare side by side. So it will give an idea of what we have made so far, the changes in the artifact. So we'll quickly close that. And in the similar way, you can also compare it across the environment. So you can select which environment that you want to compare for the selected version. And then you can compare this so that it will produce the same result that you have seen in the previous slide. So as you have synced your artifacts, you are okay with the thing. You have seen your configurational changes. You have set up your configuration changes and you're ready to move your change to the higher environment. So for that, what we can do is we have the release pipeline where you will be orchestrating your flow, how you want to deploy your artifacts across your environments, and then with the help of approval processes. So let's create one release pipeline to showcase how we can do and move our changes with the help of release pipeline and orchestrate our flow of deployment. Let's say workshop pipeline. Then the pipeline type, which is CPI, obviously we are working on the CPI artifact. Then we have the project on which you are working on. Then we have the stages. So in the stages, what we have is, So you can define n number of stages according how you want to deploy your artifacts. But let's assume that you want to have an workflow or an approval process for your QA deployment. Then you can create a single stage for your QA, and in the similar way for the pre-prod and for the production as well. So let's create a QA stage where we'll add few tasks how we want to deploy our artifact prior in the QA environment. So here we have the QA stage. So in the QA stage, we can add different tasks that we have and create a workflow for the QA stage for deploying our artifact into our QA environment. Let's quickly add the task. So I will add an peer review, which is nothing but as an upload task, I can add it out. Peer review. And I can assign it to the users, or I can also assign it to a role under which users are available. For now, what I will do is I will assign it to myself so that I don't have to switch between accounts for an approval. And also say, please peer review. Once I added the peer review task, then I can add an validation task, which will run against multiple validations that you will see in a moment, and give us a report so that with the help of validation report, you can decide whether you want to move further or not. I will select continue on failure as well because I want to show you the failure cases as well. Then I can add an approval task for the QA deployment, for an example. And in the similar way, I can add myself. And I will add an deployment task. So in the deployment task, you can select in which environment that you want to deploy your changes. So here, my development, I want to deploy it into my QA environment. I will select the QA environment. And in the deployment actions, we have where you can either upload and deploy the artifacts, or you can hold it up to only upload. Then we have enable rollback option as said. Once you enable this, we'll have enable rollback functionality enabled once the deployment is done into the QA. So in future, if you want to roll back the changes into the QA environment, then we will allow you to roll back to the previous version of the current deployment. So let's not enable, we'll enable it for the production stage. Then I will also add a Jira story updation task. It's very Jira, yeah, user story updation. So here, I said it's a bidirectional integration. The integration between the ALM tools is a bidirectional. So whether you can update your Jira story right away from the Jira, it will update into from ReleaseOwl, it will update into Jira. And if you update the user story from Jira, it will also update in ReleaseOwl. So I will update it to prod. So as I'm okay, everything is done, and I'm okay to move it to the production. Then I will add a wait for promotion task. So wait for promotion task is a special task. So what it will do is it will make sure that someone comes and promotes this task so that it will move to the next stage. So once I add the next stage, then this wait for promotion task will make sure that it will wait, and once someone comes and promote this, then it will move to the next task, which is production that I'm going to add. So in the production stage, in the similar way, I will add a simple validation task, or let's say an approval task. Prod approval. And same way myself as an user for the approval. Then once the approval is done, a deployment task where I will select my deployment environment, upload and deploy, and I will also enable my rollback for the production system. Then in the end, you can add any task, the manual task, you can add it out if you want to do any manual activities. Then let's assume that I will just update my Jira story to done state. Once we are okay with the entire setup, this setup can be as complex as required by the organization, and you can define however you like. So it is pretty much customizable, and depending on the workflow that you have defined, you can deploy your artifacts with the approval process. So as we are okay with the stages and flow that we have defined, let's move further and figure it out manually. And you can also add the email IDs if you want to add the email IDs to whom you want to intimate about the execution of the pipeline. Then by just adding their email IDs, you'll notify them about the execution of the pipeline. Let's quickly save this as a pipeline. So this is the pipeline that I have defined now, and I can use this pipeline to move my changes across. So as I have made my changes available into the ReleaseOwl platform, I also want to test my artifacts prior to move my changes. So here we have the test generator. As test generator will allow us to write the unit test for the artifacts that you have modified. So you can create n number of unit tests for the same artifacts block by block. And we will, while deploying, we will pick these unit tests that and run against the artifacts that you are deploying and get the report. So depending on the result, it will be move further, or you can also stop it by an upload bus. So quickly, let me add unit test. Voucher unit test. An example. And select the artifact on which you want to write the unit test, which is concat, an example. And from way to way, the sequence that is you need to provide it so that it will make sure that it will test it from more there. So I will select as sequence 5. I want to execute it till sequence 12. So entire content modifier will be tested using the content our unit test. I'll also add the payload. Just let me copy payload and provide it over. So this is my input payload that I want to give, and this will be my output payload that I'm expecting once the unit test gets executed. So once everything is okay, developer is fine with his unit testing, he can quickly save this. Not only that, you can also go ahead and run this unit test if you want to run it and check the report for the validation. So it will take some time to get executed. So meanwhile, if you have any questions, I can take it out. Okay. Just got a message. I'm not able. Okay. So is my voice clear, loud and clear now? I'm sorry, I just didn't see the chat. Will you just tell me when? Okay. So definitely the recording will be available once the demo is done, and we will post everyone about the recording. Okay, let's see if our unit test is done. Yeah. So here you can see our unit test got executed and it got failed. So you can also compare the changes, the expected output and the actual output, and you can see where exactly the unit test got failed and for which particular path or the selected path is missing. So expected value was 2 and the actual value went 3. So these differences can be shown high level, and if you have a complex input and output, then this will definitely help you to identify actually where your unit test went wrong or the unit test went failed. So this is how you can compare, run your unit test and You can also run this will also be run while the deployment process because we have added a validation task where it will pick the unit test and execute those tests. Along with the unit test, we will also have the CPI governance where we'll do the static code analysis on the artifacts that you have deployed and give you the report. So now further ado, let's go to the user story. So as developer might have assigned with the user story that he is working on, he can quickly go to the user story. This is the user story the developer is working on. Let's assume that, and he can add the artifact that he is working on. So this is the artifact that he has recently modified and synced into the ReleaseOwl. So let's add the artifact to the user story, and not only the artifacts, but you can also add the attachments if you have any development attachments that are required to be validated. Then you can also add the attachments under the user story so that you can have the whole sum of entire change requirement under the user story itself over here in the ReleaseOwl. So once everything is okay, then we can save this. And also, we'll also select the pipeline that we want to use. So I want to use the release workshop pipeline that we have just saved for the transportation of this artifact. So once everything is done, we can quickly validate this, and the validation report will give you an entire validation report on the artifact that you have attached under the user story and give you the report, including the unit test execution and also your static code analysis or your CPI governance report. Okay. Yes, someone just asked me, are you on SAP Store? What other certificate? What other certification please all comply with? Yes, we are available on SAP Store. And we provide other certification for the on-premise for your S4HANA or ECC and BTP application related deployment. So we do have the certification related to those environments as well. Let me give you a quick refresh. Yeah. So here you can see, as I said, we have the integration, we have the CPI governance where you can do your static code analysis on the artifacts that you have attached to the user story. So here you can see the violations that have been provided over here for the artifact that on which we have validated now. So it's just saying that someone has not maintained the artifact as per the naming convention that was maintained in the rules that we have defined in the ReleaseOwl. So this is where you can see the violations, and you can also correct it before deploying your artifact to the higher environment. And as said, it will also execute the unit test, and you can see the executed unit tests over here. 2 of them which got failed and 1 of which got passed. So depending on the validation, you can decide whether to promote or deploy this artifact to the higher environment or not. So let's assume that we are okay with the validation and I want to promote it to the higher environment. So what I can do is I can simply go ahead and promote my user story so that it will pick the release pipeline that we have defined, and it will execute the workflow and start deploying or executing the task under which the release pipeline we have defined. So here, the release pipeline, we had 2 stages, QA stage and prod stage. In the QA stage, we had a peer review, and as I have myself assigned for the peer review, I will get an email notification, or user can go to the My Task section, and from where he can see the task, what he's approving, or what he wants to have a peer review on. So here we have user story and the artifact which needs to be peer reviewed. And once the peer review is done, he can either approve it or reject it. Let's quickly approve it and go to the release pipeline. So now the validation process has triggered. Before I get an approval for an QA approval, who is going to approve my task or my artifacts to be deployed into the QA environment. So let's give a quick refresh. Just wait for a couple of time so that it will validate and give us the report. So this is something that we have added so that it will validate, and then depending on the validation report, you can decide whether to stop or to move further. As I have so make sure that validation report will also be moved further even if my validation gets failed while I define my release pipeline. So here my validation got executed and the validation report is showing the report as we have already seen for the artifact, and it has moved further as I have defined in my release pipeline that it should also go, move further even if my validation gets failed. Now it's waiting for the QA approval. So in the similar fashion, the approval can have his task in his my task section, and by moving ahead, he can go ahead and see the validation report. And once, depending on the validation report, if he wants to approve it, he can approve it or he can reject it. Or let's quickly approve it. Let's assume that he's okay with the validation report and other things with the artifacts, and he wants to approve this. Once the approval is done, now here you can see the deployment task has begun and also got completed. So it's as quick as possible as it's a single eye flow that we have added, and it has updated my artifact, uploaded, and also configure changes have been deployed and also got deployed. So once my deployment is done, my user story got updated. So which is my Jira story. So earlier it was in to-do state, now it got moved to the prod stage. So it is completely done with the help of pipeline, and you just don't have to move your user story from one stage to another stage, and release pipeline will take care of moving your user stories. So as I said earlier, so this wait for promotion task is a special task which will make sure it will wait for someone to come and promote this. And once they have promoted, then only it will move ahead and deploy my changes into production. So let's assume I just want to group my entire solution or entire changes that have been made so far. I want to deploy it into the production, then how I can do it. So all the changes which are waiting at the QA stage, you can group all these changes, and this group can be deployed to the production itself with the help of release package. So release package is a place or is a logical container where you can group your artifacts in one place, and then you can move this container with the help of release pipeline. So let me create a release package. And select the pipeline on which you want to move your user stories, and from where you want to move your user story. So I want to move my container from the QA stage only, and prior to that, you want to move your user stories individually. So we have moved my user story individually, and from the QA stage, I want to move my user story along with other user stories. So I can add the user stories to the platform now. So this is the user story that I'm working on, and you can add n number of user stories to the release package. You can group the container. You can group all the user stories in a single container and move it from the QA stage. So release package will also make sure that all the user stories are available at the QA stage, and then only you are able to move it to the next stage, which is production. So until and unless each and every user story is available at the QA stage, you won't be able to move your container or a release package. So let me quickly save this. And as you can see, I have added my user story to the package. My user story has been available at the QA stage to be promoted to the my production. I can now promote my user release package to the next stage. So once I promote the release package, it will pick all the user stories under it and move it to the production stage. And we can do the similar thing on the release package. You can validate the release package. It will pick all the user stories and artifacts under it. It will validate and give you the report that we have seen earlier and do other things as well. So now what we will do is we will quickly promote this. So promoting this will, what it will do is it will pick the user stories which are waiting at the QA stage already will get promoted. If one of the user stories from the container is not available at the QA stage, then it won't allow you to promote further. So once every user story is available, then you will be able to promote it as it got promoted. So in the production stage, it's waiting for the approval task. In the similar way, approver can put his my task or through the email link he has provided, he can press on the link and navigate to the similar screen where he can approve the task. And once he approves it, my artifacts will get deployed into my production environment. So here it's in progress. Let me show you my production environment. So this is my production environment, which is available at 1.0.31. Once it gets deployed, then it should get updated to 1.0.32. So now it's done. Let me refresh the screen and show you my latest deployment. Yeah. So here you can see it got updated to 1.0.32 with the version that we have deployed with the help of release pipeline from the ReleaseOwl. Let me quickly close this. As we have also enabled the rollback, here you can see a rollback feature or option has been enabled. With the help of rollback option, you can retrieve or you can revert the changes that you have deployed, and it will revert the changes and make sure that it has been updated to the previous change that was deployed earlier. So, and also it has updated my user story. You can also see it got updated to the state. So this is how the rollback feature will work. Just let me click the rollback. So it will ask, it will prompt you whether you want to roll back it or not. And you can simply say yes, and it will do the thing and roll back into the previous state. So you can also see the rollback status. And yes, voila. So here my rollback is done. And let me refresh it. It should move to the previous state, which is 1.0.31. Yeah. So here, this is how you can deploy your artifacts from one environment to another environment with a proper set of validations, approval process, and the orchestration that you have defined with the release pipeline will make sure that this all things are done, and then only your artifacts have been moved to the next environment or to the targeted environment. So this is what I would like to present for our workshop as an hands-on. And if you have any questions so far, I would like to take it and answer you for your questions. I would like to take a pause, waiting for the questions that you would like to ask.
Okay, that's an interesting question. So as I mentioned, ReleaseOwl is a SaaS application. So we operate on subscription models. So there is a subscription fee that is applicable. So you can reach out to our sales team. You can write to us at sales@releaseowl.com, and our team will assist you on the detailed pricing model. Okay, thank you, Rahul. Thank you for helping us showcase how we could adopt automation at various stages of CPI development lifecycle. So now I will move on to the next interesting session on how can we learn, how can we get certified, how can we collaborate to develop this DevOps skills around CPI. So let me introduce you to the success community of ReleaseOwl. So you can log into success.releaseowl.com. So this will be the homepage. You can click on the login button. And there are various aspects of the success community. As I said, the importance of success community from ReleaseOwl is not only helping people learn skills, but also to get certified, to collaborate, to discuss, and contribute to the SAP community. So specifically for this workshop, once you log in, you can click on Academy and Certifications, get certified. So once you click on this, you will have multiple certifications. To be very specific for this workshop, you should have to click on Cloud DevOps Professional SAP CPI, the Integration Suite certification. So stay tuned for our other workshops, other certifications around ECC, BTP, and S4 as well. So this is how the certification page would look like. So this is the description, the certification prerequisites, and the certification guidelines. So all the attendees will get a voucher code, unique voucher code through your email. And each voucher code will have a validity period. So I would request everyone to use the voucher code before the validity period. And in case if you were not able to use the voucher code within the validity period, please write to our support system. And as I said, so we also have a help desk where our team will be happy to help you. So some of the prerequisites before you get to access the ReleaseOwl platform. So the must is an SAP BTP account. So if you would want to introduce version control system into the CPI practice, then yes, Git account. Otherwise, it is optional. And ReleaseOwl account, obviously, to introduce automation around DevOps. So we will help you provision that. So if you have any SAP BTP account, then please share your email address associated with your SAP BTP account in the chat box. And you can visit the below link for you to get registered. In case if you do not have it, then I would want you all to register for a free BTP account on the link that is displayed on the right-hand side. And again, once you register, share that email in the chat box and we'll help you provision the platform. So once you log into the screen, this is how your window should automatically open once you click the link. And you can start using the platform once you have access to ReleaseOwl. And a great thing, once you complete the certification, you will be certified. So this is your certificate of achievement. This is one of the recent achievements from one of our attendees. And you can share it socially. And it is recognized under certified certification from ReleaseOwl. And again, as I said, apart from me and Rahul, I think there are few people behind the screens who helped us get to all the attendees, get the training material in place, get the webinar organized. So I would like to thank you, Tanya, who's been moderating this session for us. Rajesh, who predominantly managed the entire certification program for us. And Sai Jitesh, through whom you all known about this workshop and attended this workshop. And thanks to Madhu for designing such an interactive screens of this presentation and as well as the UI for us. And if you would need more details, please reach out to success@releaseowl.com, and we are here for your success. And we will open up the floor for questions. And if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll be able to answer it right away. So the question is, where do we get the recording of this meeting? So once the webinar, the workshop is complete, so we would send out a link and also host it on one of our private channels, and through which you can access the recording for this entire workshop. There's an interesting question. Do you offer SAP DevOps advisory services? Yes, a lot of our clients, because the concept of DevOps has been existing for a pretty long time. And there are a lot of professionals, a lot of qualifiers who've been talking about DevOps, but SAP DevOps is pretty new. And we being from the DevOps ecosystem for over 20 years, yes, we've been consulting a lot of companies on SAP DevOps advisory services as well. So you can reach out to us at info@releaseowl.com or success@releaseowl.com, and we'll be able to address more on the DevOps advisory services.
We have 2 more questions on the chat.
Yeah. When you talk about certification, is it general SAP certification or only ReleaseOwl? So we would want you to not treat this as an SAP certification. This is essentially a mix of DevOps and the product certification. So we'll talk about best practices around DevOps, and your certification will have both DevOps skills for that particular SAP application. Either it could be CPI or ECC or S4 or BTP. And then a product certification, because that is also important for you to understand how the platform is being used or will be used in future. So it will be a mix of both DevOps plus product certification. Another question, what are the deployment options? So again, just to reiterate, as I said, so we are the SaaS platform. So we offer multi-tenant, private, and dedicated cloud options. So we partnered with all the major cloud services, AWS, Azure, GCP. So feel free to contact our team if you would wanted to know more about the deployment options. Do we have any trial accounts? So we would encourage, so our trials are we wouldn't call it as trial, but ours is more of proof of concept, I would say, which is pretty much involved, which is nothing less than an implementation for us, which is basically, as I said, more of an involved exercise from both the parties, which requires time and effort, because DevOps is not about few clicks and some processes or some integrations. It's more of collaboration. It's an exercise between development teams and operation teams that come together and set up processes. Yes, to answer your question, yes, we do offer accounts, trial accounts, proof of concept accounts, but executing the proof of concept is more of an involved exercise from us. So if you'd want to know more about how do we do proof of concepts, what's the timeline, how do we get involved, the kind of sessions that are part of this exercise, feel free to reach out to our sales team and they'll be able to help you with more information on that. And as Rahul was pointing out, so we also have a playground environment, so where you can come and access the account, as we mentioned. So there are some prerequisites to access the account. So once you have those accounts, you can directly access ReleaseOwl, obviously for the non-commercial use of the platform. That's an interesting question. So how do you typically support project teams that have adopted this software when technical issues arise? So we have a 3-layer support system for our customers. So obviously we have a dedicated account manager for every customer. So who will be our primary point of contact for any support related issues. Second, our premium support model allows customers to access our support system 24/7, both email and chat. And we also have a dedicated hotline for our customers through which they can get a video or an audio support for any of their releases or technical issues that might arise. But otherwise, the success community has got a detailed list of the FAQs and also documentation, which is pretty easy to adopt, read, and then get rectified. But other than that, we have a 3-layer support system that is already built into the platform. All right, I think there are no further questions, but we'll still give you 20 minutes back. So you will have a survey at the end of this meeting. And I would request everyone to take 2 minutes for the survey and help us understand about the workshop, anything that you would want to add on, any of your interesting topics that you would want us to cover in future. But stay tuned to hear from us about our other workshops, other upcoming workshops. Okay, there's another question. Is there any tutorials for this product? Yes, so we have a private channel, a YouTube channel, where you will have dedicated videos for every of this module. You will have a product display, product overview, some of the use cases that are available. And if there's any specific use case that you would want to talk to us, then please reach out to us. And there is also an online documentation that I was referring to on success.releaseowl.com. So you will have a detailed documentation and information and tutorials for this product. All right, then I would like to thank everyone and the panelists here and the attendees taken out time for this workshop. We look forward to seeing you again in another interesting SAP DevOps workshop. Till then, thank you, everyone, and take care.